Bud Not Buddy, Chapter 5. We last left off in the middle of page 41, and we were right in the middle of what's known as a flashback. A flashback is a scene in a story that happens before the main plot. We know that when this story began, Bud was 10 years old and living in a home, and he was just about to go off to the Amos's house. His mother was already dead, since she had died when he was 6. But in this flashback, Bud is remembering back to when his mother was alive, so it happens before the main part of the book. A flashback usually tells you a lot about the character's backstory, who the character was before the story began. It can also tell you what kind of ideas or thoughts or other people influenced that character's thinking, feelings, and ideas. You learn a lot about Bud's mom in this section. And you learn a lot about Bud's grandpa. He's described as hard-headed, and that means stubborn. He insisted on something that his daughter didn't want. That kind of gives you some clues as to how Bud's mama felt about him. And then notice that on page 40, it's clear that they've had this conversation multiple times. This is obviously something very important to Bud's mom. But where did it begin? Well, Bud was pulling Mama's picture out of his suitcase, and then you get into this whole memory. So it can be kind of hard in a story to tease out when something's happening that's a normal part of the story and when you're in a flashback or when you're listening to something or hearing or reading something outside of the normal storyline. It's a really key thing to listen for in this book. As we move forward from page 41, you're going to continue to stop, think, and paraphrase. And this time, listen for what does Bud's mom tell him about his name. I'm going to back up just a very short paragraph here because it gives us a clue that, Bud's still in a flashback. We're not in standard time yet. We're not in the time of the story. Listen for that. She had 4 favorite things to tell me. One of them was about the picture, and another one was about my name. She'd say, Bud is your name, and don't you ever let anyone call you anything outside of that either. She'd tell me, especially don't you ever let anyone call you Buddy. I may have some problems, but being stupid isn't one of them. I would have added that DY onto the end of your name if I intended for it to be there. I knew what I was doing. Buddy is a dog's name or a name that someone's going to use on you if they're being false friendly. Your name is Bud, period. I'd say, okay, Mama. And she'd say every single time, and how do you know, and do you know what a bud is? I'm going to reread that. And she'd say every single time, and do you know what a bud is? I always answered, yes, Mama, but it was like she didn't hear me. She'd tell me anyway. A bud is a flower to be, a flower in waiting, waiting for just the right warmth and care to open up. It's a little fist of love waiting to unfold and be seen by the world. And that's you, I'd say. Yes, Mama. I know she didn't mean anything by naming me after a flower, but it's sure not something I tell anybody about. Another thing she'd tell me was, don't you worry, Bud. As soon as you get to be a young man, I have a lot of things I'll explain to you. That didn't make me calm at all. That was Bud Caldwell's Rules and Things to Have a Funner Life and Make a Better Liar Out of Yourself, number 83. Rules and Things, number 83. If an adult tells you not to worry and you weren't worried before, you'd better hurry up and start, 'cause you're already running late. Now think back to what Bud's mom told him about his name. Record that.